She looked like nobody. An old woman, a wooden chair, a ball of wool. Every single morning she sat by her window and knitted. Nazi soldiers walked past her every day. They nodded at her. Some even smiled. None of them knew what she was doing. And that was exactly the point. This is the story of Augusta Voss, a retired seamstress from occupied Belgium. A 67-year-old widow who never fired a gun, never ran through the dark, and never once raised her voice. She just knitted. And in doing so, she passed critical military intelligence past 50 Nazi censors without a single one catching her. Not once, not ever. Augusta Voss was not a spy. She was not trained. She had no code name, no handler, no escape plan. She was a seamstress who had spent 40 years of her life turning thread into something beautiful. But in 1943, Belgium was under Nazi occupation. German soldiers controlled every road, every post office, every station. Augusta's husband was gone. Her neighbors lived in fear. And every single day she watched military trains roll through her town, loaded with tanks, soldiers, and weapons. She thought, somebody should know about this. The Allied forces in London needed information. They needed to know where German troops were moving, how many, and in which direction. But every channel was blocked. Radios were tracked, letters were opened, couriers were caught. 23 agents had already tried to get information out of Belgium. 23 agents were caught. Augusta had one idea. It was quiet, it was slow, and it was hiding in plain sight. In London, a British intelligence officer named Colonel Marcus Webb was staring at a wall of failures. He had a file on his desk. It was labeled Cipher Failures 1940 to 1941. Inside were 23 names, 23 people who had tried to smuggle intelligence out of Belgium, 23 people who never came back. Webb was running out of ideas, and the war was not waiting. Then his assistant showed him a footnote, a tiny note buried deep in a resistance report. It said, "Belgian women observed knitting near train stations, local custom, irrelevant." Webb read it 3 times. Then he smiled, for the first time in months. Because here was the conflict in its clearest form. The Nazis had built a perfect wall of surveillance, but they had one blind spot. They ignored the invisible people, the quiet ones, the old women with their wool. Determined, Webb decided to walk straight through that blind spot. The obstacles were everywhere. Every letter mailed from Belgium was opened. Every package was inspected, every parcel weighed and checked. 50 Nazi censors worked in shifts. They read, they searched, they suspected everything. And then there was Hauptmann Friedrich Krell. Krell was not like the other officers. He was a former cryptographer. He had broken a resistance network in Poland. He had dismantled another in France. He did not look for guns or radios. He looked for patterns, small things, things that did not quite fit. And one morning, Krell noticed something about the old woman on the corner. Her knitting never ended. She knitted every day, for weeks, for months, and the piece she was working on never seemed to grow. It stayed the same size, the same shape, always in progress, never complete. Krell started watching. Here is what the Nazis never understood. Knitting is a language. It has been for a very long time. During World War I, women across Belgium had used knitting to pass messages to Allied forces. A stitch here meant something, a dropped stitch there meant something else. Different yarns, different colors, different patterns, all of it carrying hidden meaning. Augusta knew this history. She had grown up with it, and she had taken it one step further. Her cipher was built inside a genuine Flemish knitting pattern, a traditional design 200 years old. Anyone who knew knitting would see a perfectly ordinary piece of folk craft. But inside that pattern, Augusta had hidden a second language, a code. Each type of stitch represented a number. Each number represented a military unit. The direction of the yarn, left or right, told you which way the troops were heading. The color of the wool told you how many. To crack it, you needed two things: the traditional Flemish pattern as a base and the cipher key. Krell had neither. Let us pause here for a moment, because this story is not just about codes and wars. It is about two people sitting on opposite sides of a street, playing a game neither of them ever discussed out loud. Augusta Voss woke up every morning knowing she could be arrested, knowing she could be shot. She picked up her needles anyway. She counted trains, she counted tanks, she counted soldiers, and she turned every number into a stitch. She never panicked, she never rushed, she just knitted. Krell, on the other side, was a man who saw danger in everything. He woke up with the same feeling every day, that something was wrong and he just could not prove it yet. He was brilliant, he was patient, and he was slowly driving himself mad over one old woman and her wool. The tragedy of Krell was simple. He was looking for a code, but Augusta had not made a code. She had made something beautiful. And beauty, it turns out, is very hard to arrest. The system worked for months. Augusta would sit at the station, watch, count, knit. Then, every week, a man named Tariq Mahmoud, a British field agent posing as an antique dealer, would stop by her house. She would hand him a small parcel. He would mail it to London inside a package labeled "Old Lace Samples." In London, a trained operative would receive it, open it, decode it, and within hours, Allied commanders would know exactly what the Germans were planning to do next. Month after month, the intelligence kept flowing, the system held. Then, on Tuesday morning, Tariq's shop was raided. He escaped, but the route was burned, the delivery system was gone, and Augusta was now completely cut off from London. Worse, Krell had placed a soldier outside her house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the single most important message of the entire war needed to leave her hands within 72 hours. Think about what was happening in that street. A Nazi soldier stood guard outside Augusta's house to stop her from doing anything dangerous. Every morning he watched her sit down and pick up her knitting. He saw a harmless old woman passing time. He had no idea he was standing guard over the most dangerous woman in the region. Inside the post office, 50 censors opened letters every single day. They read words, they counted pages, they held envelopes up to the light. Some were bored, Some were tired, some were thinking about home. Every one of them was looking in the wrong place. The message was not in the words, it was in the stitches, it was in the wool, it was in the quiet, patient hands of a woman they had already dismissed as irrelevant. That is the cruelest kind of irony. The enemy was so close and so completely blind. It was the spring of 1944. The Allied forces were planning the largest military invasion in history, D-Day. For the landing to work, the Germans needed to believe it was coming somewhere else, not Normandy. They needed to look toward Pas-de-Calais. Every piece of false information, every decoy, every misdirection was critical. But then a real piece of intelligence came in from Augusta's earlier transmissions. The 15th Panzer Division was preparing to move. If Allied command knew where, north or east, they could use that information to plan the entire operation. Augusta had seen the movement with her own eyes. She had already encoded it. She had the message ready. But there was no route, no Tariq, no safe channel. She had 72 hours and one idea left. She was going to mail it herself, straight through the censors, straight past Krell, straight through the enemy's hands and out the other side. Augusta sat down at her kitchen table. She wrote a letter, a perfectly ordinary letter to her daughter in London. She wrote about the weather, about the garden, about how she missed good bread, about nothing important at all. Then she folded an incomplete square of knitting inside the envelope. She added a small note with it. "Darling, I cannot figure out the last section of this old Flemish pattern. Would you complete it for me?" She sealed the envelope. She walked outside, past the soldier. She smiled at him. He nodded. She walked to the post office and dropped her letter into the box. Then it began. Censor 1, open, read, check, pass. Censor 5, open, read, check, pass. Censor 12, the wool was held up, counted, put back, pass. Censor 29, the letter was read twice, the wool examined, pass. And then the final checkpoint, Hauptmann Krell. He picked up the envelope. He read the letter slowly. He turned the knitting over in his hands. He looked at every stitch. He felt something. He always felt something. But he could not prove it. He stamped the envelope. He passed it through. The letter arrived in London 3 days later. Augusta's so-called daughter, an SOE operative, took it to a small back room. She lit a candle. She opened the code book. She decoded every stitch. The message read, 15th Panzer, North, 72 hours. Allied command acted on it immediately.
Do not let the quietness of this story fool you. Every single action Augusta took was a choice made under the shadow of death. Sitting at the train station, dangerous. Counting soldiers, dangerous. Encoding the numbers, dangerous. Passing the knitting to Tariq, dangerous. Mailing the letter herself past a soldier through 50 censors to the hands of Krell, almost unsurvivable. And yet she did it all with the stillness of a woman simply passing time. That was her greatest weapon, not the code, not the cipher, but the absolute unshakable calm she wore every single day like a second skin. She taught herself to be invisible, and invisibility in a war is the most powerful thing you can be. History loves the big stories, the generals, the tanks, the speeches, the victories announced on radio with trumpets in the background. But the war was also won in tiny rooms, quiet streets, and kitchen tables. It was won by people the world was not watching, by the ones the enemy had already decided were not worth watching. Augusta Voss teaches us something uncomfortable. Courage does not always look like courage. Sometimes it looks like an old woman sitting by a window. Sometimes it looks like wool and needles and a half-finished square that nobody thinks to question. And power, real power, is sometimes most effective when it is completely invisible. Think about the thread running through this story, not a metaphor, an actual thread. From Augusta's needles to Tariq's hands, to a postal package, through 50 checkpoints, past Krell's fingers, and finally into a small room in London where a candle was lit and a message was decoded. One unbroken thread connecting an old woman in Belgium to the commanders who would shape the course of history. That thread never snapped, not once, because Augusta never let it. Every morning she picked up her needles. Every morning she chose to continue, not because anyone told her to, not because she was paid, not because she was trained, but because she believed that what she was doing mattered. And it did. The war ended. Krell was transferred to the Eastern Front. His career collapsed under the weight of everything he could feel but never prove. He never broke another network. Tariq Mahmoud returned to London quietly. He was never officially acknowledged. His name does not appear in any major history book. Colonel Webb received a commendation. The footnote that started everything was never mentioned in the ceremony. And Augusta Voss went home. She lived the rest of her life in the same small house on the same small street. She kept knitting until 1962, when she passed away peacefully in her chair, needles in her hands, wool in her lap. When her neighbours came to collect her things, they found one last piece of unfinished knitting, a small square, a traditional Flemish pattern, incomplete at the final section. They thought nothing of it. But years later, a historian studying wartime resistance networks came across Augusta's story. She tracked down the knitting. She found the cipher key. She sat down with both. And she decoded Augusta's final message. It said, "They came, we won." Augusta had knitted her victory cry, her very last message, knowing only one thing, that someday someone would know how to read it. History does not always remember the right people, but sometimes, if you know how to look, they leave a message behind, stitched quietly into something beautiful, waiting to be found.